This episode of the KrakCast is brought to you by our friends at BigDoor24.pl. It's a new free service dedicated to helping expats to rent or buy a property and earn cash back on successful mortgage applications. BigDoor24.pl also has lots of tips and advice on renting and buying in Poland, so make sure you check them out and use the special promo code KrakCast to get a great cash back offer. And now, on with the show. So guys, did you know that last week, or maybe even 2 weeks ago, we had our 100th episode and we forgot to say anything about it?
We can't count, that's the problem.
We're paying attention. Dave, 100 episodes of the KrakCast.
It's a very proud moment.
It's just, I can feel the pride radiating from your side of the room over there.
All right, let me have a drink.
Yeah, go ahead. Welcome back to the KrakCast News, everybody. I'm John, there's Josh, Dave, Dr. Mike is here. A lot of stuff to talk about this week, and we're going to go in the order that
you just said there wasn't a lot of stuff.
Well, now there is a lot of stuff, because I'm looking at the notes I made on this piece of paper, which is going to determine the order of the subjects we're going to discuss. The first one on my list here.
Best note.
That'll be one across.
The first one on my list here is teacher strike. Some people, Dr. Mike, are in their 6th day of a hunger strike trying to get more money for teachers. What's going on here?
Well, there's also an obesity crisis in Poland, so I think that kind of, it's to everybody's benefit. Yeah. No, but the teachers right now striking, a lot of people don't realize, and we didn't mention this during the last, or unfortunately I didn't mention, that you actually have two separate main unions in Poland. So you have the Związek Nauczycieli Polskich, so ZNP, that's one, and that's the bigger union. Then you have Solidarność, which has their own teachers union, which is slightly smaller. And they're a little more in bed with the government. But even they are deciding, like, yeah, maybe we should be striking or, working together with this other union. They had their last chance debates and talks with the government on Monday. And they decided, well, we'll try again next week, so in a couple of days. April Fool's Day, yeah. So that's going to be fun to talk. And if the talks don't go well, then the larger parties, the larger union said that they're going to strike the 8th of April.
Any menacing work to rule stuff going on in Ireland when the teachers' unions are gearing up for a fight? They start adhering to their contract, but right to the letter of it, so they won't do any extra supervision or minding kids in the playground, and anything that's not exactly specified won't be done. Is that a part of the tactics in Polish negotiations?
Oh, no, right. Well, actually, one of the tactics they mentioned, like Bronias, the head of the teachers union, I mentioned this last week, said basically it's up to us whether or not students go to the next grade. That's actually a good weapon during our negotiations.
What they call leverage.
Yeah, or holding your children hostage.
You want your kids to graduate, maybe we want a little extra cash in our
Hey, what do
pocket.
you guys think about the tactic of hunger strikes? Is this a good way to go?
I didn't really see much about this. Tell me more.
Well, first of all, let's get Dr. Mike let's stress the doctor part of that. The Dr. Mike view on this. Can you really not eat for 6 days?
No problem.
Obviously, you can't.
I can't. Well, you can't either. Nobody can.
You could survive
Smart
about
ass.
a month without eating.
No, you can't.
When it comes
No, you
to
can't. 6 days.
You can survive more than 6 days without eating, as long as you're getting.
Okay, survive means you still have a heartbeat, or you can.
You still have a heartbeat. Yes, you will start getting a little
live normally.
weird or something like that after 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
But if you're well hydrated, you can go weeks without food. You're not going to have much energy, and after about a week, you're not going to probably have enough energy to go out and hunt. If we're talking about like primordial kind of 10,000 years ago.
Okay, let's keep it modern day. Relevant.
Yeah,
McDonald's. You can
How many people are on hunger strike? It does seem highly melodramatic.
I think it's a handful. I don't know exactly how many. It's just a couple. I saw a picture this morning that showed 3 people.
Also, what is it about hunger? Because, there's nothing visible, like, hey, look at me, I'm on hunger strike. Well, all I can see is a perfectly normal person wearing clothes who isn't eating at this moment in time. But
It's like I go on a hunger strike like 3 times a day.
Yeah, right.
Just doubts the optics.
If this hunger strike is like others I've read
genre.
about, they have a kind of an out. They can have juice and things like they can drink, which keeps them kind of obviously hydrated and a little bit of sucrose going there. So that's probably the situation here. So if like take it to its theoretical conclusion, if the government says sorry, you don't get the raise, these people continue to not eat. Whose fault? Josh, give us the philosophical take here. Whose fault is it if they die of hunger?
Well, I would say it was their fault because they were not taking food.
Because We're also not talking about some big ideological political movement or something like that. We're just talking about like, I want more money. If you don't give me more money, I'm going to kill myself.
Well, let's call the hunger strikes a distraction then, shall we? And let's remind ourselves that we did discuss this a few months ago on the show and kind of predicted waves of public sector strikes to affect PiS's government, because they have adopted the kind of spend and, stimulate the economy by generously giving new welfare payments, etc. So that was bound to lead to demands from underpaid, let's be frank, public sector workers in Poland. The average industrial wage.
Is there anybody left?
Well,
We had the doctors and nurses, we had the police and safety security people, we had emergency services, now the teachers. Is there anybody left to strike?
You'd be surprised how many people are, in the employment of the government, and like how many unions, how many like administrators,
various bureaucrats
all over their place, and they're all not getting paid. And
bus drivers, tram drivers,
exactly.
Maybe they're next.
Of course, everybody wants more money. That's completely understandable. Everybody in their own self-interest wants to have as many, resources as possible.
Yeah.
But right now, politicians use instead of like finding a systematic way to give everybody more, they keep breaking them down to groups, and every time a group pops up, like one political party latches onto them and uses them as a tool to get some political leverage. I don't want to sound too one-sided here, but basically, the only party that suggested a solution to this, to some extent, is cookies. They said, like, instead of like having each separate group of people strike for extra 500, 1,000 zlotys, how about we just raise generally the minimum income that's not taxed from, what is it right now, about 3,800, something like that, to 40 some thousand. Right. So that basically means everybody not earning a lot of money won't pay taxes for a higher amount. And teachers, they calculate on an average, you get about 700 zlotys more, but everybody else will get more money as well. So this isn't like,
that's not really for the teachers.
It's for everyone. And the whole idea is like, when you give the teachers X amount more money, then from the system, from the budget, you have to take out, from taxpayers, you have to take out X plus, 50% plus 100%. So instead of like just taking more money from taxpayers, how about not take any money from taxpayers, which includes the teachers and all other unions and public sector workers, etc.
Well, there is this kind of movement. It's been kind of mooted in the UK as well, where you actually have the tax threshold at just above the level that would be not the minimum wage, but what they call the living wage, so that instead of like having laws that compel employers to pay workers a certain amount, you just simply raise the tax threshold so that you don't pay any tax until you're above the level that is deemed kind of sufficient, so that you can go on holiday twice a year and send your children to private.
There is dangers from removing too many people from the tax net. It's an old trick, like to win votes as well. Always has been. I would say that it's much more healthy in a society if everyone pays something into the system, in general. But I was going to say, if we're talking about public sector pay rises across the board, Poland's economy is still booming, and they're actually long overdue. They are badly paid, so it mightn't have any real negative effect on the economics of the situation, because, as you point out, most of these people are low-paid workers, and that money tends to get spent directly back into the economy, and stimulates growth. So.
Well, basically, that is actually part of the problem, that PiS has been giving out money to like separate groups to get their votes, to get their attention, to get some, political points, while public sector unions, they haven't had much of a raise in about like 6 or 7 years. So when you consider inflation and stuff like that, they're actually earning less money. But the whole idea of like, you were saying like, everybody pays into the system. When it comes to the budget of the government, I think it's like double digits, like 10 or 50% of the money the government raises, is from income tax. The rest is all from VAT, duties, sales taxes, etc. So if they decrease the amount of money coming from income taxes, it's not really going to hurt the budget that much. While this money will stay in the pockets of people, and it's kind of like everybody talks about like stimulus payments. Instead of giving, the only problem is like governments prefer giving people money. Because people are like, oh, I got free money for nothing, I'll vote for this person, instead of, not making them pay more taxes, because people don't really feel it the same way. It's like when you pay less taxes, you don't get that same dopamine rush as when you get a check. They're like, oh, here's 500 zlotys.
Yeah, but income taxes are the most steady type of tax as well, and they're most predictable. And the danger of removing too many people from the net of that is, A, the feeler of ownership you get from paying income tax into a system, and B, it's more prone to fluctuations in the market and depressions in your economy. That's what you talk about, a broad base and good tax policy. And
you have the situation in the UK where there are people who are working in the public sector, like I don't know, a married family with children, both parents are working in the public sector and they're getting kind of child benefits and this benefit. And, if you work in the public sector, then basically it's not really that you're paying tax. You're being paid by the taxpayer, and there's just an amount being deducted, a nominal amount being deducted from your salary to make it look as though you are paying tax. And then you're getting kind of benefits in top. So you don't actually have any, investment in the system at all. I mean, even though you are.
Yeah, but you feel like you do. You work, you see it coming out of...
I know they feel like they do, because I've had a few bitter arguments.
The psychology of it's very important. It's a society. Tax is supposed to represent, your payment back into society. So those psychological things are important, I think.
Just occurred to me that a hunger strike is a very photogenic way to strike. Very attention-grabbing way to strike. Yeah?
Are you considering a teachers' union juice cleanse or something?
I don't know. Maybe.
John,
It's just, if you hear somebody's on strike, you say, yeah, whatever. You hear they're on a hunger strike, well, suddenly you get interested because it's, the idea is kind of...
Stick it on Instagram, like every day, like how many inches you're losing.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of selfies in there.
I actually missed the stories about the hunger strikes.
Moving on to something else we have discussed a couple of times in the past, and it's something that has finally come to a conclusion. And that is the matter of the price that we have to pay to ride the buses and trams in Krakow. The city government finally agreeing on new prices, 4 zloty 60 grosze for a one-use ticket, which is going to be good for 50 minutes, kind of an odd choice, 50 minutes. And then the 20-minute ticket, 3.40, which is an increase of 60 grosze over the current price. I know that very well because that's the ticket I usually get myself. Costs 2.80 now for 3.40. I don't know. Am I going to buy a ticket? I don't know. We'll see. These come into effect, I think, beginning of May? So beginning of
May, the weekend where everybody's going to be out partying. The long May weekend, they're going to come back and all of a sudden realize getting back home is going to cost me more now.
More expensive, significantly more expensive tickets for the bus and tram, Dave.
I recommend you do buy a ticket, by the way. Krakow's tram inspectors are, in my opinion, some of the most efficient public employees in the world.
Some of the nicest and most helpful, friendly
to their job. And they appear, if you ride the tram regularly enough in the city, they appear just enough to make you always buy a ticket. I think there's some fascinating mathematician hidden away in a public municipal building.
There's an algorithm somewhere. They figured out, yeah.
Anyway, sorry, just wanted to say that, John.
I don't know. I can't remember the last time I got checked. And I kind of make a big deal of, when I have the ticket, when I buy my ticket, I'm kind of like, hey, please, please announce that there's a ticket check. I want to show. I want to, I want to be checked. It never happens. And I live off of Mogilska, so I'm up and down a very busy traffic artery, and oftentimes at early rush hour.
You bike everywhere. You're a bicyclist.
You're one of those
I'm
guys.
in the tram on the tram quite a bit, and I can't remember the last time I got checked.
Well, I get checked regularly. I ride every day in and out to work. Where
is there a particular
on the tram?
No, is there a particular place on the map, Genius, where you get?
Yeah. Okay. Right. I find
everybody's a comedian today. Jesus.
I find they often get on a Halatergo. And down at the main stops, Jegorzetska, Galeria.
Don't you pass through Matechna quite a bit on your way to? I seem to recall that's kind of a busy area for checks as well. Maybe no.
Yeah.
I mean, I go down Starowiczna a lot, and I get the feeling that there seem to be more checks during the summer when you have more tourists or people who might not know that.
Oh, for sure.
So I like, and you're saying like you don't remember last time you were checked. Neither do I. But I remember usually when I get checked, it's like several months of nothing, and then over 2 weeks, it's like every other day.
You should write a letter to the mysterious algorithm man. He lives in a building.
Do you think we're kind of reaching the upper limit, the ceiling on what people will voluntarily pay for a tram ticket?
Or you think they might stop eating for a few days?
Go on strike?
Well, no, I mean, look, it's...
$4.60.
The 2.8 ticket is somewhat of a Krakow institution.
40 days and 40 nights without food, and then, all right, I'll take a tram and buy a ticket.
Yeah, as I said, I would recommend not doing that. You will be caught. But yeah, it's still not an outrageous price, is it? $3.60 for a tram ride. Let's be fair.
4.60.
Well, $4.60 for the full ticket.
Right, yeah.
In practice, everyone will get for a single use. There's not many places where you'd need the 50 minute.
I'm a little bit confused by the 50 minute because right now it's 60 minutes. It's a single use or 60 minutes.
Yeah.
And right now they're changing it to 50, and I don't know.
It's like a tiny minority of 3 people who have a kind of a 54-minute daily commute on the tram. They're like, oh my God, you bastards!
What's the news on the? Weren't they touting a reduction in the price of the all use ticket, like the Every Line ticket, which is
they're cheaper
$83
if you have signed up as what's it called, the program where you're a registered Krakow taxpayer.
You're a resident here, and
if you're a resident here,
live just outside of town, which you can't apply for.
And but it went down, but I think not even 5 zlotys a month.
And most importantly, my beloved 37 zloty single line ticket that I think is just ridiculously good value, and that's what I use. Any news on that?
The single line, I think the single line survived, but it's certainly not 37. God. I'm pretty sure it's still in. I could be wrong, but I think it's still there. I read about this about 3-4 days ago. I want to say about 60 zlotys, 65 zlotys for a single line. And
it's 37 at the moment.
It's not 37.
I bought it every fucking month, dude.
Is it really?
Yeah.
37? That sounds really cheap.
May I say to the makers of the software of the crack of Tram network that it's a little tricky to renew your card. I have the hang of it now, but the first few times
with those machines
was a bit traumatic because people are waiting behind you and you're cursing violently at the fucking thing.
It does take forever. It's true enough. But anyway, more expensive tram tickets really soon, so carry some extra change with you. Moving on, again, it's kind of the same subject. Same subject.
Oh, something interesting.
What a link.
Totally different, but same idea.
Walter Cronkite.
Public transportation.
Just pure gold,
Public transportation is completely messed up right now. They closed off Krakowska, about a week ago, and started renovation. Actually, they made a lot of progress already. It's completely torn up. Yeah. It's closed off. So this means Krakowska is closed, Królewska is closed, Zakopianka is partially closed. It's traffic paralysis all over the city, guys.
Yeah, can I just say that we're always talking about how great it is, all the construction projects in Krakow and all the progress, but when are they going to finish this fucking city?
Why do they have to happen at all the same time? That's kind of my question.
They seem to strategically design all the construction to be happening around town, so it's not on one side of town, the other side of town. And right now, if you're in the center of town, everywhere you look, it's construction. You can't get out of town without being stuck in traffic somewhere.
I wonder how this affects going back. Let me say,
it's just a competition with Warsaw, isn't it? To look closer to how it looked in 1945.
Oh, too soon, Josh. Too soon. Just to segue backwards to the tram ticket thing, I wonder if it increases your chances of getting checked on the trams when they don't run on Królewska. They don't run on Krakowska. I know they're all kind of rerouted on the same routes now, a fewer number of routes. So I wonder if that increases your chances of getting busted.
I would hope that they're a little more lenient around there, because right now the buses, you have buses making up for the trams that don't go, but you don't know exactly when it's coming, which direction you get lost. They should be lenient because people are just confused, and they're going to be confused until it's finished and done with. And I think it's the same story here on the side of Krakowska.
Coming back to Krakowska, the idea is to make it kind of similar to Zvezniecka. After if you remember what that looked like before it was renovated, a little more pedestrian space, the sidewalk, the pavement a bit wider, maybe some trees to green things up a bit, better tram tracks, obviously, and just a little more, pedestrian friendly, I guess I would say. So I guess the cosmetic changes will be good. Traffic flow, I don't know if it'll really make a difference. I don't know what the parking situation is going to be like.
It's not actually, living in the vicinity. There's not a lot of traffic on Krakowska anyway.
That's true. Although it is an important artery, given it goes across the bridge to Podgorze and whatnot. It's a very important tram artery, I think.
I was going to say, aren't they upgrading the tram lines, because they are awful loud and wobbly? They always have been along that.
I remember standing by the tram stop there on Miodowa, and if I'm talking on the phone as the tram is going by, you cannot. It is so loud.
Yeah. What's the date for finishing this project?
Somewhere around January 2020.
So the rest of the year then. So all summer, all January, right in the dead of winter, it'll be ready, huh? Well,
with that and the bridge going on, it feels like a lot down on this side of town.
It does feel like a lot. That's right. I wonder what they're going to do to the bridge. Just resurfacing the pavement.
Hurry up! That's what they should do with the bridge.
Or maybe again a cosmetic upgrade to the bridge somehow. I don't know.
I think you're talking about the railway. They have been working flat out on that, though.
No, I'm talking about the Pilsudski Bridge, Krakowska, going over the river.
Oh, they're apparently also supposed to put lighting or some kind of new illumination on that bridge as well to make it look a little fancier.
Kind of like the pedestrian bridge. Then.
Yeah, something like that.
What's the name of that bridge? It has a name.
Kładka
Bernatka.
There you go. That's the one. So we'll have some nice, pretty lights after all this stuff is done.
Sounds like a Polish rapper.
I was going to say, it sounds like a duck or something.
Moving on, trying to read my own writing on this. Here, Sunday trading ban I've written. Now, again, another thing we've discussed a couple of times on the show before. It's kind of coming to an interesting point because it's decision time for the government, certainly before the elections later this year. The electorate will want to know what the situation is. As you know, we have limited availability of shops. Right now, it's last Sunday of the month. Last year, it was 2 Sundays a month. Next year, the plan is to be no Sundays per month, but there's a bit of a backlash kicking in. People are realizing they like going shopping on Sundays more than they thought. Guys, where do you see this going between now and the elections in October?
Right now, it's all over the place because, well, Peace, who was, backing this program, it's their idea that, Sundays no work. They've realized that a lot of people aren't too happy with it. But there are businesses that are happy, like the big companies, whatever. That means basically Sundays, they don't have to pay for workers, they don't have to pay for storage, whatever's going on Sunday, and people still come in shopping the 6 days of the rest of the week. But there have been some suggestions from economists that there is actually a bit of a slowdown when it comes to employment and when it comes to small companies, small Polish-owned businesses, that they're losing out on this.
I think Mike, I think the stats and the research is pretty clear. To the extent it has had an effect, it has been very much in the favor of larger, mostly foreign-owned chains, and very much to the detriment of, as you say, these smaller Polish-owned companies. There has to be a political consequence to that.
And Peace is always talking about, being out there for the little guy. So there's talk that they're, starting to study and send out some polls and things like that. Polls as in voting and asking people, not polls as in Polish people, because since this is a KrakCast about Poland, that actually might get a little confusing. And they're waiting for the data to come back. And there's talk that they might backtrack on this policy to some extent, possibly coming to a compromise where we would have 2 Sundays off during the month like we had last year. But this is still really unofficial, under the radar. When this happens, they're going to want to play it in a way that makes them look good. Like, we gave you 2 free Sundays, when you had none. When their whole, argument at the beginning was all Sundays should be off.
If you're not helping the small businessman, who are you helping? What's the point of this? Just get rid of it.
Put more money in Biedronka's bank account. Yeah.
The market decide.
Yeah, still hate the Sunday trading ban, although I'm absolutely sure they will not proceed as planned and eliminate all Sunday shopping next year. That's not going to happen. Either we're going to extend the situation we have now with 1 Sunday, or we're going to revert, as Mike said, to last year's 2 Sundays a month. But there's no way in hell we're going to be closed every Sunday next year.
May I just say, whether you like it or not about the cultural decline of the West, shopping centres are now a part of the recreational day for families. You don't spend all day in them, but they're a nice place to go with your children, and Sunday's one of our days off, and it's not cool to close all these places that we used to go to. Pisses me off.
All right. Oh, venting, Dave. Venting. Strong opinions on the Sunday trading ban.
I don't see what was wrong with the system before. No one was forcing anybody to work on Sunday.
I asked you before, but I can't remember.
You have a thing about tell your employer.
I can't remember what you said.
Objection.
What's the situation in Ireland with Sunday trading?
You can open on Sunday.
So there's no restrictions. If you want to be open, you can be open.
Supermarkets. We have a lot of laws about when you can't sell booze, and I believe there's a booze ban up till about 12 o'clock in the day, but that might have been repealed. I don't follow these things close enough, but I think there's a couple of little restrictions, but Josh, all shops are open on Sunday.
UK the same? They can be open anytime they want?
Yes.
Okay. Actually, no. Isn't it in London with Sundays that they can be open on Sundays, but only a certain amount of hours? So that's why they have a big break during the middle of the day, or they open or close earlier or later, or something.
London, if you're talking about licensing laws, all bars close at 10 on a Sunday.
When you get alcohol, and it's totally different set of rules. But I'm talking just regular retail, standard retail operations.
Lost your voice, Josh. You sound kind of weird.
Another nationwide topic that's going to be in the news quite a bit in the coming weeks is the matter of elections.
Elections.
A spontaneous, unplanned election.
Yes.
Where'd this come from?
Call your doctor if it lasts more than 4 hours. Both for the European Parliament and for the National Parliament. Dr. Mike, some interesting names being discussed this week in regards to the European elections.
Well, it's the European elections, but these are the elections where, politicians go to die or something.
It's democracy.
So it's one of those, we don't know what to do with these guys, send them off to the European Parliament. So right now in Poland, you have 3 ex-prime ministers running. Jerzy Buzek, who was prime minister up until 2001 with AWS.
He was the guy who used to play the piano in Avaria every...
Maybe he does too, like pastime is, when you're at the EU Parliament, you're only there 4 days out of the month or something.
Yeah.
But
You
yes,
got to earn that €5,000 or whatever it is.
I think it's 10,000 actually. He's been in the EU Parliament for the last 3 terms, and he'll be running for his 4th one now. But as well, previous Prime Minister Sidwash, Peace's Prime Minister, she's also running for Member of Parliament, number 1 on their list, and Eva Kopacz, the Prime Minister right before that, is also running for...
Could it be, Dr. Mike, sorry to catch you off guard here if you don't know the number. I don't know how many seats Poland has. Could it be that all of them win? Or are they competing for the same seat?
Actually, no. Eva Kopacz is in Wielkopolska, so up north, I believe. Syd was here in Małopolska, Świętokrzyskie, and so they're not competing directly with each other. And it's like 90% that they're all going to get in.
So they could all win.
Yes, like there's been talk that Syd was actually her main competition. Buzek is more about like, let's see who can get a higher percentage of their votes or more voters to support them, and that's her like target. She's pretty sure to get in. The question is like how many voters we should have supporting them.
Dave, how emotionally invested are you in your European representatives?
Not very, I would have to say. Yeah.
Do you know who represents you from your Irish constituency?
Well, not really. I mean, I've lived in Poland for a long time, dude. Yeah, no.
But do you know who represents you in your Polish constituency?
No.
Yes.
Got me.
Yeah.
Checkmate.
It's weird. It's odd. People don't get really excited and emotionally invested.
Are we going to get a
European
faceless
elections.
bureaucrat speech here? I can see you winding one up. Come on.
Kind of, but there's a lot at stake. I mean, we're joking about it, but I don't know how much they get paid exactly. It's more than generous, and
A lot more than posels in Poland.
Various allowances they get. There's a lot at stake here for, as you say, it's literally 4 or 5 days a week in Brussels, or a month rather, a month. It's ridiculous. And so it's a nice little package they get. And nobody cares.
John wants a package, everybody.
Yeah, vote for me.
We're talking about the European Union, or as certain people in Britain call it, Hotel California.
Actually, this all connects back to our teacher strike as well, because the current Minister of Education, Zalewska, she's actually running to be a member of Parliament as well, number 1 in her region on her list. And basically, this means if people like her and support her, they're going to give her like a get-out-of-jail-free card when the proverbial shit hits the fan, when the teachers do go on strike, and she'll go to the European Parliament. But if they don't like her, and they don't like what she's been doing in her job, she's going to stay here when things get really bad. So it's kind of a weird situation. So a lot of people are like criticizing the government on that. The government has like sent a lot of ministers and well-known politicians to candidates to run for office in the European Parliament. It's going to be fun to watch.
Put this on the list of things that I should have checked before we started recording, but I would be curious to know what the in Polish is called the frekwencja, the turnout. The voter turnout is in European elections.
It's less than half for what it is for the parliamentary
far
election.
less than half.
It's seriously, I think it's like around 20% or something. It's a joke. This is why you can be pretty sure that all the smaller parties are probably going to get their representatives in. So like Cookies will definitely get their people in. Who else? Like you have Koalicja Obywatelska, so that's Nowoczesna and Platforma. They're mainly on the same level as Peace, so they'll get in their people as well. Everybody who's the main characters, they're going to get in.
Are any of you going to vote for European Parliament candidates? Yeah.
All democracies have these little elections nobody really votes in, but actually have quite important positions.
Yeah.
People can only handle so much politics. Getting them to vote in a national election is a big enough problem. I guess what you're saying will always be true about politics. You all heard about the city councillor who's been voted in with 24 votes and all this. It's always going to be part of the old.
Yeah, but the European Parliament just isn't important, though, is it? I mean, it doesn't do anything.
Decides most of the main topics for play, and the national leaders just kind of have their own phone lines to each other anyway about parliamentary business. So,
Dr. Mike, what about news connected with the national elections in October? Anything to report?
Not much going on new, except the fact that people are complaining, or a lot of pundits are complaining that like the European parliamentary elections are just being used as an excuse to promote parties and their topics and their issues and their direction for the fall parliamentary elections here in Poland. So it's going to be all big one long campaign. So starting basically next couple of weeks, we're going to be in election season here in Poland.
Can I just throw this in there as long as we're talking about elections? Have you noticed how amazingly and completely what's his name? Robert Biedron and Wiosna have disappeared from the news.
They've gone like below for most polls are showing that they're not even at 5%.
They were everywhere a month ago or 6 weeks ago, whatever it was. And now it's who? It's amazing. How does
We
that happen?
gave them the whole little special episode.
We did,
Push over the top. Nothing happened at all. Let me down with his big movie star face. Beat a drum.
I'm just curious because isn't he running for the European Parliament as well?
He is as well. Actually, their whole campaign right now is for European Parliament, not for the parliamentary elections going on in the fall. But a lot of people are suggesting that they're running for the European Parliament because if any of them win, they are then legally obliged by their party contracts to give some money back to the party here in Poland, so they have money to fund the parliamentary.
Seems
elections.
like they may have pulled the trigger on launching the party maybe a month too early, but we'll see. Staying with the subject of the European Union, it's a really important subject, interesting subject, but doesn't get maybe the media coverage it deserves because it's not a very sexy subject. The official title of is called the EU Directive on a Digital Single Market. Now, Dr. Mike, walk us through what we're talking about here and why it's so important.
Well, this is also known as ACTA too. And anybody remembers from a few years back, ACTA, which was legislation brought in to regulate the internet, especially how money flows when it comes to copyrighted material. There was a lot of demonstrations in the public about this, all over the continent. Here in Poland and Krakow, I remember, thousands of people getting together. And the government then, PO, decided, not to support it. So they went back, to drawing board, reconstructed the regulations and came out with the new directive, which, shorthand everybody calls ACTA 2. There's a lot of parts in there that, talk about how much who is being paid for what. But there are two main parts of it that really are controversial. There was a lot of name changes, but let's just refer to them as originally Article 11 and Article 13. One being known as the link tax, the other one being about the upload filters. Article 11 with the link tax basically meant that if you're on Facebook or any social media platform and you cite or link to another news source, technically that platform then would have to have a license with that news source and pay them some type of revenue or kickback for that link, for that information. And they're not even saying how much information you would have to mention in your article. It could be just a couple of words, just a couple of lines,
or just a link.
Or just a link, exactly, and that's part of it, and that's going to make it's going to be very complicated. People are saying this is to help journalists have more control of their content. Actually, it's going to be more publishers, the big media companies that are going to be able to block anybody else from giving out the information free or just for anything at all. And then you have Article 13, which was basically talking about uploading material like on YouTube or on Facebook, photos, videos, and that YouTube as a platform will be liable for anything that's uploaded. So they have to filter, they have to make sure that no copyright material, licensed material is there. But the problem with that is say if a content provider puts up something which is a parody or is a fair use, it's going to be blocked. YouTube will have to actually first screen that, check that, and then it might be permitted. And that basically means that, a lot of hot topic issues will take several days before they go up, or you'll have an idea for something, with completely fair use, but it only makes money if you put it up right away. This also means that you're creating a mechanism that filters content first, which you have all the algorithms and everything set up, but you just tweak the numbers a little bit and you can block anything else for any other reason. You're setting up a mechanism, an infrastructure for censorship, and anybody can decide with some kind of legislation this shouldn't be up there or this shouldn't be up there.
We're talking about print media, maybe news media. Do these changes or proposed changes also impact things like music and visual musical arts and things, YouTube, things like that, or is it just news media needs to be credited?
This at the beginning, all the big lobbying companies actually brought in artists and musicians as well to back this controversial legislation under the guise as well, you guys will get a little bit more of a kickback. But they pulled out as well when they realized that no, this isn't actually going to help us. This is going to help a lot of the big legacy media companies, at least when it comes to stuff that's posted on the internet. But this does as well come back to how much artists and companies are paid for licensing, in public when music is played in public places. This is like I said, Article 11, Article 13, but that means there's a dozen other articles that are... And
when you start slapping regulation on everything, it's only the big players that have the resources to comply with those regulations, and so after the regulations come into effect, they're the only ones left in the game, and the little guys get cut out. That's usually how it works.
actually, that was another issue that the big companies like YouTube and Google, they were against this. But the truth is, when this is enforced and they have to filter stuff, they have the resources and the systems to actually have this happen. But little companies, little internet service providers, websites, they're not going to have the money to buy these, complicated programs and algorithms. They'll be cut out. And it was actually, this is where we're getting a little conspiratorial right now. We have to remember that Germany and France, at the same time as these negotiations were going on, were discussing again legislation concerning Nord Stream 2 and the gas pipeline. Germany, of course, wanted that gas pipeline to go through. France wasn't too keen on it. Well, France was pretty keen on ACTA 2 the way it was, while Germany was a little, resigned about it. But somehow they came to an agreement.
Payback time.
Yeah, a few months ago in January, where France said, okay, go ahead with Nord Stream 2 with these little things. And Germany like, well, you know what, I think we can support ACTA 2 as well. And people got a little, annoyed with that. Like, I think it was only Frankfurt Allgemeine Zeitung, FAZ, that newspaper was the only one who actually investigated this and reported it a few days ago, but it really didn't get picked up much by the media.
Dave, jump in here.
Certainly wasn't picked up by me. It was very interesting. Nugget, as John calls them. Also, I think to broaden it back out, there's been a war going on in the background between, as Mike was saying, the big legacy media companies who own all the publishing rights and the copyrights to the most powerful franchises and titles out there. And they've kind of co-opted the entertainers, the musicians, and the print media in some extent, who all feel like Google, YouTube, Facebook have stolen their dinner, so to speak, that they're not paying their fair share. And there's definitely some merit to the arguments that, Facebook is essentially a publisher, yada, yada, yada. But these laws are really about curtailing the internet. And as Tim Berners-Lee had a good quote, he said, it puts people's freedom of speech to the test of an algorithmic lottery. And it's wrong. And the smarter people have turned against these laws. And it's ridiculous. I think Mike laid it out really well there in good detail. I don't have much to add to that, except to say that I fucking agree totally.
Quick question for you, Dave. I think a side issue to all of this is, this the idea of content creators getting fair compensation for their product or their creations. And again, we're focusing on print media, news and whatnot, but there's also the musical aspect of it as well. And I know you have some experience with the Polish agency that is responsible for collecting money to pay the artists who create the music that you play when, for example, you have the radio on in a bar or a restaurant, right?
Yeah, I couldn't find the link. I was reading something on the way to work the other day. It was more broadly about these EU laws. It wasn't a Polish news story, but it was saying that it would end up tripling, if this is correct. I need to verify this, but it could triple the payments bars have to make here. It was in the Irish context of nightclubs getting ready to adopt this legislation. And, that seems madness to me. It's already very high, the fee.
Well, a lot of people don't know this, but it's, the European Union thing. If you have a restaurant, a bar, you have a radio on in the background, I guess theoretically, if you have a TV on in the background, you're supposed to pay to this agency to compensate indirectly the artists that created the content that you're playing.
And there's two of them as well. I can't remember their names now as well.
Sykes
is one.
Sykes is one, that's true.
And there's another one as well.
Remember more or less what the monthly fee is, or yearly? I don't know how they charge.
I'm going to say it's around, for the bar I ran was a reasonably large bar. Don't forget, they scale and price it depending on what you do. A live music venue will pay a much higher fee than what we were, which was essentially a sports bar which played some music in the background. So I think we were putting the lowest tariff, and I believe that was about 170 zloty per month for each organisation.
Yeah, so call it 2,000 a year for each one.
Yeah,
more or less. Yeah. Do you see this as Brussels looking out for the little guy and fighting the good fight, or is this Brussels once again focused on taxing and regulating everything?
It's not an EU thing. It's not often that I have.
John sees faceless bureaucrats hiding in the shadows.
Fire them all.
Not often that I have the opportunity to defend the European Union. But,
go ahead.
Here's a collector's item coming up, people. Go ahead, Josh.
Oh my God, yeah. It's been decades, if not kind of since the advent of radio broadcasting, that if you broadcast music in publicly open premises, then you have to pay a license to the appropriate organisation. It's long precedes the European Union.
It seems to me that, just anecdotally, that looking around at what I see in different bars and clubs in Krakow, that YouTube is kind of the default now for just background music and playlists and whatnot, right?
Yeah, because you hear advertisements in the
That's so sad. I see that. Really? And people advertise these things they call karaoke, which means go up, hit a YouTube video with a backing track because they're all supposed to be on YouTube, and just have some horrible microphone playing on it. The standards of sound quality are going down.
So what's the mechanism in place to make people pay for using YouTube? Is it also Zykes or whatever you call it, the same agency, or is there?
Yeah, well, Zykes don't care what device you're using. They just say, well, you're using a few hours a day. It's not the main source of your revenue, so we'll put you on this tariff. If you're say a venue that has bands on, charges in, jukeboxes, and your team is music, you'll be charged a higher rate.
Do you think the compliance with that is pretty high, or is it like TV licenses?
High. They send around their scary inspectors and say we'll fine you, and then you go to your lawyer and you say, "Fuck, do you see this bill I got?" And then your lawyer goes, "Yeah, you have to pay that. That's the law." And then you go, "What do I have a lawyer for?"
So is a TV license. So is a TV license, and almost nobody pays the TV license for TV.
Yeah, but business premises are easily checked, John. There's only so many of them. You can walk in at any time of day and say, "Oh, that's music." Oh, easily proved, isn't it?
Good job you never had live music in the embassy. Then you really would have had to pay a lot.
Yeah.
Live music there? I never noticed.
Well, there you go. All the good news to know this week: teacher strikes and ticket prices and traffic congestion and. What was it? The Sunday trading ban, all the stuff in the news, everything you need to know.
Everything's going to shit, basically.
Everything's going to hell.
Enjoy the week.
Sell everything and then just walk the earth because it's all.
Something to eat now.
Oh yeah, it's time to go watch the match or something.
Walk the earth like Jules in Pulp Fiction. I like it, John. I like it.
Anyway, that's it, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the KrakCast News.